everyone, Shirley here. When I was running my businesses, I remember thinking if I could only clone myself to perform another 30 hours of work a week, or I wish I could find someone who has gone through this business transaction I am contemplating to give me advice and to sweat the details for the next 6 months. And though external advisors are critically important, I am one after all, sometimes businesses need part-time, senior, experienced executives who can roll up their sleeves and work in the business temporarily. This is now known as fractional or interim executives, and the trend is growing. Today, we're talking about when and how small, growing GovCons can use fractional executives strategically to move their companies forward without breaking the bank or giving up equity. My special guest today to help me look at this topic from a number of perspectives is Paul Sirotkin, CEO and founder of the Sirotkin Group. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Shirley. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, Paul. Please tell our audience a little about yourself and Sirotkin Group.
Yes, certainly. After 30-plus years managing smaller GovCons across the financial and operational spectrum, and being Corp Dev VP acquiring government contractors, I launched Sirotkin Group. We work to empower CEOs in smalls and socioeconomics on achieving strategic, operational, and financial excellence. I call myself a holistic fractional executive, or HFE. We begin our client journey with a GovCon vision scorecard to identify key gaps and opportunities, ensuring client has a playbook to pursue its full potential.
Thank you, Paul. Some members of our listening audience may not be familiar with the concept of fractional executives, so let's start with some definitions. Explain what we mean by fractional executive.
Certainly. You mentioned that there are executives who work less than full-time. That could be a few hours a day, a few hours each week, or other arrangement. They can take various C-suite roles, from CEO, CFO, CIO, COO, CSO, CTO, or CMO. I know that's a lot of C's. Fractional executives often work for 2 or more companies at the same time.
So, Paul, can you give us an idea of the type of responsibilities that are typically assigned to fractional executives?
Yes, fractional executives typically fall into 2 categories. First, what I call technical fractional executives, or TFEs, those who bring a very deep technical domain. Examples include those who spend years, for example, as a CFO, managing finance, accounting, capital management, and contracts. Proposal managers, who directed the creation, execution, and submission of responses to RFPs and RFIs. And CTOs, who've architected, implemented, and managed IT infrastructure, software platform acquisition, and integration of networks with company strategy. The second type is, as mentioned, holistic fractional executives, HFEs, those who've overseen the management of these core functions with cross-domain responsibility, including these areas: setting and meeting strategy, realizing the goals the company has set for itself, attracting, retaining, and incentivizing employees, adapting company persona to market changes, and realizing return for investors and shareholders, even if the universe is one or a closely held group.
I want to explore each of these categories with you, but let's first understand why companies should consider this work arrangement. What are the benefits?
Well, fractional executives provide services along a continuum, from specific functions performed by the TFEs to the broader services from HFEs. Benefits always can be reduced to 2 overriding outcomes, though: revenue and cost, with the goal to attain faster growth and lowered expense in a more predictable, orderly manner. Within that continuum, fractional executives can provide many benefits, including this rather long list, which I'll go through now. They cause the company to defer the hire of full-time personnel. They can leverage the effects of outsourcing services firms, connecting the company to a well-known network of industry experts, providing processes and workflow to all aspects of operations, reinforcing or proposing to redirect company direction, and strategy operations. Helping the CEO assess persons for their current or projected roles. Laser focusing the CEO on developing and meeting personal and company goals. Developing measures and KPIs to assist company and individual performance, and this taking over in full a specific functional area.
I agree, Paul. There are not enough hours in the day for small GovCon CEOs to work on their businesses, so a fractional executive can be very helpful. But beyond just getting things done, a flex executive arrangement also provides more flexibility because they can be hired on an as-needed basis. And I want to amplify what you said about the network of industry experts. Fractional executives can also give smaller companies access to a bigger talent pool. Most fractionals do not want to work full-time, yet they possess specialized skills that can be critical for helping small GovCons in certain complex circumstances and business transactions. Paul, we have defined what a fractional executive is and how they can benefit a small GovCon, but let's dig into the when. And let's start with the holistic fractional executive. When should a GovCon CEO retain a holistic fractional executive?
Yeah, HFEs usually enter when the CEO is experiencing one or more of these situations, and I'm sure they sound familiar to many CEOs listening. Number one, they continue to take on too many of the key company functions. Number two, they have built a company that has moved forward, though is in need of its first corporate experienced executive. In other words, someone who understands the full range of corporate functions and can express it in strategic outcomes. Number three, the company has been in existence for some time, won contracts, put in place adequate processes and people, though is still not progressing as the CEO desires and needs its first corporate experienced executive. Number four, the CEO has elected a strategy that includes acquisition, whether integrating a recently acquired firm, has a target of acquisition in mind, or wants to understand what it takes to finance, transact, and implement an acquisition. And finally, number five, the CEO has reached a point where sale of the company can be seen in the foreseeable future and wants to start preparing.
I see this scenario frequently where the CEO has driven the company to a certain size, usually between 10 and 25 million in annual revenue, through sheer guts, determination, and hard work. But they hit a wall. It's time to build an executive team and delegate authority. Is this a good time to bring in a holistic fractional executive to develop and execute that new organizational structure?
Absolutely. An HFE can help the CEO evaluate different structures, the timing of implementation, the risk and potential rewards, and the hoped for outcomes. This discussion will be highly iterative and subject to market inputs.
Great. We need to take a break. I'm talking to Paul Sirotkin, founder and CEO of Sirotkin Group. When we come back, we'll talk about utilizing technical fractional executives and the keys to managing any fractional or interim executive effectively. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Shirley Collier, President and founder of Scale to Market, is your host for this Growth Masters Federal presentation. Scale to Market helps businesses think, plan, collaborate, and build market value by developing and executing customized, data-driven business development playbooks, building efficient information systems, and creating high-performing BD teams. Utilizing the proprietary Davy Business Development Growth Framework, Scale to Market partners with business owners and executives to increase their company's value by achieving profitable and sustainable growth in the federal marketplace. Email Shirley at scollier@scaletomarket.com to learn more about the Davy Growth Framework and how it can be instrumental in helping grow your federal contracting business. Back now to Shirley's conversation with Paul Sirotkin as they discuss best practices for utilizing a fractional C-suite executive to grow your GovCon business.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about utilizing a holistic fractional executive. Paul, how does a GovCon CEO know when they should hire a technical fractional executive?
At a high level, Shirley, the CEO has identified that one or more functions has failed to keep pace with the revenue trajectory realized or expected based on foreseen awards. With regard specifically to accounting and finance, the data derived from current processes and systems does not yield meaningful, historical, comparative, or projected insights. The sheer number of company transactions and interactions argues for engaging seasoned CFO or controller support. In the case of contract management, the CEO needs support to stay on top of key data, whether it's burn rate, backlog, a tracking of actual indirects against budgeted rates. Often the accounting finance TFE can manage this domain as well. Regarding business development specifically, the CEO needs better clarity and impetus to the firm's pipeline management, opportunity search capability, target prioritization, BD role definition, and market sensitivity. While GovCons are best served when all managers are hunting revenue, the addition of a TFE pulls together the collective efforts. Good TFEs will impart best BD practices to the team and monitor execution. Then there's always that trade-off, whether to use a TFE versus an outsourced supplier. If selecting an outsourced firm, the company needs to ensure adequate internal capacity to manage the relationship with the outsourced firm.
I think that is an important distinction, Paul. You're saying that in some cases, firms need a fractional executive and an outsourced service provider, so they're not mutually exclusive. I want to explore best practices for hiring and managing a fractional executive. How do I evaluate C-suite fractional executives before hiring them?
When exploring engaging with a fractional executive, we recommend you meet with the individual to understand how they operate, the daily, weekly, and monthly cadence between the two of you. Before starting an engagement, be sure to explore these areas. Any areas of potential conflict of interest, areas where you could envision conflicts between the two of you and or your team, the nature of their other engagements to ensure that they can devote sufficient time to your needs. Once satisfied, you should have a sense that this person is trustworthy and will operate in your best interest and that of the company. Be certain to set out in writing the specific activities the fractional executive will be undertaking. Work to a written schedule when the activity should occur. Make yourself available to the executive when scheduled. When exigencies occur that disrupt the project flow, try to give notice in advance. Realize that differences of observation are likely to occur between yourself and the executive during the process. Remember why you undertook the engagement in the first place and endeavor to honor that. Be honest with the executive on the service they're providing. If a course correction is required, get it on the table at earliest possible time. Critically, consider the executive a colleague. If you hold to the position that they are a hands-off, disinterested consultant, that will lead to a suboptimal outcome. The right executive will consider him or herself integral to the future of your company and will care deeply about your progress.
That's perfect. So given all of that, what characteristics for fractional executives in the GovCon market should I most value?
We feel strongly that the person should have varied experiences with small and mid-tier government contractors. While we recognize the enormous talent that exists in executives and managers from large businesses, our finding is that the kinship in entrepreneurial experience is paramount to a successful relationship. Good fractional executives operate under the same mantle as your company, seeking best value on their delivery. You, as a CEO, must be satisfied with that FE has clearly conducted discovery of your company assets and will be able to imprint his or her personalized service to your needs.
What type of fractional executive contractual arrangement might CEOs expect?
For the technical type, the TFEs, the parties typically structure a fixed price engagement over a defined time period. The TFE will provide, on average, a number of hours for that fixed fee per week or per month, guaranteeing a minimum number of hours provided within that period and setting the maximum number of hours for the same time without additional payment. Both parties are advised to do regular check-ins to ensure the fairness and efficacy of the arrangement, as it is likely to change once the parties fully understand the other's capabilities and needs. Holistic or HFEs are likely to offer more flexibility in the arrangement. Our approach typically has been to structure a 2 to 3 month discovery engagement, followed by one of several types of engagements as specified earlier. Like the TFE construct, the follow-on work lends itself to a fixed price relationship. In any event, given where the FEs enter the company, the price points are meant to be sensitive to the cash flows of the GovCon.
So as we wrap up here, Paul, what are your final thoughts and overall recommendation to CEOs seeking to hire either a holistic or a technical fractional executive?
I think they should be looking for a partnership, informal as it is, that is not available otherwise within the company or even within the company's outsourced advisors. Look at the functional executives as a force multiplier of the resources the company already has at its disposal. The CEO's talents, the capacity of its people, and other resources and assets within the operation. I think that's the key. Can they get their value provided and strong ROI that the functional executive can provide to the CEO that the CEO otherwise would not be able to get?
That's very good advice. I would like to briefly summarize what we discussed today. For small, growing GovCons, fractional C-suite executives can be used strategically and tactically and very cost-effectively to bridge the gap to a full-time executive team for overloaded CEOs. And Lord knows that most small GovCon CEOs are overloaded. But there has to be a good fit. Make sure the fractional you hire has worked in a fast-paced entrepreneurial GovCon environment where there are budget constraints and milestones and goals must be achieved quickly. Paul, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our audience today.
Thank you so much, Shirley. It was truly a pleasure being here.
Folks, if you would like to get in touch with Paul, he can be reached at Paul Sirotkin, that's SEROTKIN, at SirotkingGroup.com. Or you can reach out to us here at Scale to Market, and we'll make sure you're connected. This is Shirley Collier, President of Scale to Market and host of the Growth Masters Federal Podcast, signing off for now. As we close, I want to thank you for joining us today and encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn and visit our website, that's scale2market.com with the number 2 in the middle, where you will find a link to our webcast, which now include open captioning for those seeking more clarity in the narrative, along with our podcast, white papers, my blog, and other links and resources. While there, please leave us a comment or suggestion so we can stay focused on what's important to you. We'll see you next time.